Indiana. News, sports, education, and entertainment. Wake up, GI, with Jeffrey Smith. Brought to you by the Gary Community Schools Corporation.
All right, everybody, we're back. Once again, we want to give a shout out to our friend, Miss Robbins. Very, very good stuff for her. We're very happy about her success, and definitely go check her out. Trust me, it's always better to, if you can, to keep that loved one in the home. And she and her wonderful team are obviously doing a very good job of helping families do that. Now we get to switch gears and we get to talk books, because we have a young lady who has a financial background that I'm about to pick her brain about. But she's also now an author, and she has a book that is out now, and we're going to find out a little about her. Her name is Miss Carolyn Keefe, and I just found out that she is an accountant by trade, correct?
Yes, I'm a CPA.
A CPA, and she used to be with the for the district for a minute, weren't you?
Right, from 1991 to 2007.
Yeah, that's a little more than a minute. You were there for a while, so
Yes,
you was there for a while. Well, first of all, we want to welcome you to the show. It's a pleasure. But you switched gears a little bit. Yeah, you are an author, a published author. So tell us a little bit about that. First, give us a little background about, where you, I always like to kind of find out about people, where you grew up. Are you a Gary native? And of course, if you are, I got to ask what high school you went to. You know how that works. You've been here long enough.
Okay. A Gary native.
Yeah.
I graduated from Roosevelt.
All right, there you go. Finally, I get one of you all on here. She keeps running the West Side people out here. Thank you. I knew there was a kinship. Yeah. And so after that, you graduated.
I'm native.
Yeah.
Of Gary. I did live, when I first graduated from college, I did live in Chicago.
Where'd you go to undergrad? Where'd you go to college?
Indiana University in Bloomington.
Nice. You were a Hoosier. Then you go get, obviously you graduate. You go get your first corporate job, I assume, with accounting, and you went to live in Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's where the opportunities were at that time. I worked for 2 Fortune 100 companies.
Wow.
And I worked for the Federal Reserve of Chicago.
Yeah.
And then I didn't move right away back to Gary.
Right.
I commuted for a while from Chicago to Gary to work for an opportunity at Gary Schools.
Yeah.
And then after that, I worked for a couple of more school corporations and the airport.
Wow.
And now I'm an author.
And I want to get to that, because I got a good friend who is the head of the Calumet, the Little Calumet River Basin, Dan Repe. And he has a background. He was an accountant, and I always kind of tease him because he's told me stories. And it's we're all kind of in the same age group. And so in the 90s and all that, being an accountant was kind of like everybody was looking at you because of the Enron stuff and all that. And so what was that like? What was the field like? I mean, were you participating in it then? Were you in Chicago? Because he was working in Chicago, and he was just talking about during that time, it was just a whole thing in the accounting business.
I was in Gary.
Okay.
I had different issues because it was still a male-dominated career.
Yeah.
And it was also dominated by white people.
Right.
I felt when we went to large conventions, rather isolated, not many females, black or white.
Right.
And then being just a handful of blacks. So it was a different challenge than than the Enron reaction.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you shared that, because I do remember some of my classmates that I ended up talking to, some females from college who ended up becoming accountants. And I remember one of them talking about this story that, because she's a CPA licensed, did everything she's supposed to do, went to a great school, and was always being referred to as a bookkeeper and things of that nature. And I never really thought about that kind of, innuendo and all that stuff that was going in. And so I think when you kind of talk about, you said, listen, this was kind of the thing that I was dealing with, is number one, I'm a woman of color in a very white male dominated profession at that time. And so, not only am I over here trying to, exact my worth from this, I'm trying to, make sure I get my respect. Yeah.
That is so true. And feeling isolated, that's hard to do. Anything initiated was basically initiated on my part.
Right.
Of course, I had 1 or 2 other people that traveled with me to conferences on occasion.
Because you saw it at the conferences for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
At the conferences. And I was the first black in my position, I believe, at Gary Schools.
Wow. I can believe that.
Now, my boss was African.
Yeah.
but the person that held the position before me,
yeah,
and I think all others before that,
wow,
were white male.
wow, amazing. I'm gonna get you. We're gonna talk some accounting one day, but I want to get into your book. So obviously, as you said, you've been in this profession for a while. It is your talent. But what brought you into writing? Were you always a fan of books? Did you kind of get inspired by wanting to tell a certain story? How did this come about?
Well, this is actually my second book, but this book came about because I'm a pastor's wife.
Okay.
In Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And
plug the church. What's the name of the church? Mount
Hebron Baptist Church.
All right.
It's in the North Lawndale area.
Okay.
In Chicago. But I had workshops that I did at different conferences in Chicago.
Right.
I happened to do one at my church, and I saw that there was a need for financial education.
Right.
Because people weren't happy with where they were financially.
Right.
Either debt was out of control or they couldn't manage the resources that they had. So I did offer to help, but there was pushback. The explanation that I got basically was that they were too embarrassed to share the information I needed to help them.
Right.
So when I faced that more than once, I decided, well, if I put it in a book, that's not invasive. You can read it at your own time. You can get most of the help that I was going to offer you in a one-on-one situation. And so 2.5 years ago, I began writing it. I didn't know it would take this long, but sometimes life just took over and it'll be on the shelf 2 or 3 weeks.
Sometimes the story's not finished. You have to just keep adding chapters at your own pace. Absolutely. I mean, I want to ask you about this because, you said something and you're a very candid person. So I want to get this. One of the things that we've talked about with people on the show for the past year or so is about mental health. And we talk about, mental health in the Black community and things like that. I've always argued and suggested that financial health is equally as important because, as you pointed out, the pushback that you got was people feeling embarrassed. They didn't want to talk about it. How do we go out here and kind of, start these conversations? Because I've always, one of the things that and I've made some mistakes myself financially is that I think that, we as Black Americans, even if we grow up in homes where our parents are doing well and they have jobs, I think that there is just a naivete to money and how to manage it and how to live within our means and really just understanding money and how it works and how to balance our checkbooks. I mean, we know the government and all that, they don't balance, but I'm talking about in our own households. I've known people who have very successful jobs and things like that and still are running around here with pointless debt. And then I've seen people that earn a very modest income and they're living the dream. And so it seems to me that there's discipline in there and we don't have those conversations in our community.
We don't, and that was another driving force. On my summary on the back cover, it talks about mismanagement of money.
Yeah.
It's one of the leading causes of problems in our lives.
Yes.
If we could just get our finances together to provide for our family, to provide for the things we want as well as things we need. But when you're in crises,
right,
then it's sort of like going on a diet. None of us like to give up the food that we like. The other bad habits, we don't want to give up the fried chicken.
Right.
So that we can eat baked chicken and be healthier. Well, that's similar to a budget. You have these bad habits.
Right.
To get on track, there's some things you have to change.
Yeah.
It might just be your attitude about money.
No, I agree. We're talking with Miss Carolyn Keefe. She is the author. What's the title of your book?
God's Bailout.
God's Bailout. I want to get there. I'm not going to have you give out all of the information in the book. I promise you. I want to ask you about this because I remember years ago when I really just started to kind of hunker down a little bit, I kind of took a little advice from my dad because I basically ignored his advice when he was giving it to me when I was in college and when I was a young man. But it absolutely has kind of stabilized me. And I want to ask your thoughts on this. And that is, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you work, about paying yourself first. What are your thoughts about that? Because as far as I'm concerned, when I kind of give myself a nice little working salary every paycheck, just a little bit of what I, figure out what I'm trying to do and things like that, it's changed my life and it has really kind of stabilized me. But I want to get somebody like yourself's opinion about that.
Well, an entrepreneur, that's basically different
Right.
than getting a salary
Right.
at a job. Your starting point is different
Right.
than someone that gets a paycheck. So of course you need to pay yourself.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure that your business, like in your personal life, is provided for, because you don't want a bad financial reputation.
Right.
Because that will crush your business.
Yeah, see, I guess what I was giving the analogy, you're absolutely right. Is like, let's just say you have a mortgage, or let's say you have your bills, and you're kind of figuring out your monthly expenses.
Right.
What you do is you just cut yourself out a little piece of that income that you cut, that, and say, all right, this is just for me, and then I'm not touching the rest. And in the end, sometimes you'll have a nice little piece left over.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It is important for you to provide for yourself when you're an entrepreneur, or else what's the purpose of being in business?
Absolutely.
If you can't support yourself and your household, but you're walking a fine line. You're new in business.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to support that business and yourself?
Right.
That you have a nest egg to walk into the business, which I would recommend having an accumulation of savings that you have access to, so you can not only provide for the business, but for your household until you get on your feet.
Now, as somebody who, understands the way the economy works, and I'm not getting political, I mean, this happens just over generations, and forget the administrations or what have you. One of the things that, I think is probably more important than ever with the uncertainty and the way the economy is changing, we're getting to a more tech economy, we're getting into more of an AI-driven economy, certain jobs are changing and different things. What would you say to young people about the proper time to really start looking at saving? Because everybody nowadays is not going to be able to put into that company or employee 401k. It's going to have to be maybe managed or initiated by that young person who's about 24, 25, maybe getting into the workforce. Then there are people out there, some of the experts, that even speculate that you should also, some of these younger people should think about putting a small portion of that into the markets and just leaving it alone, and hopefully it'll mature and be there so they can have a retirement future. I mean, what is that looking like? Well,
you've kind of touched on 2 chapters in the book.
See, I'm trying not to get in your book.
All in the book. First of all, on savings, if you're just starting, of course you can't do some of the more advanced things.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend you just getting started and you get to start.
Right.
And I have very basic savings tips up to the more advanced.
Right.
Because there are solutions for people no matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're a child, and I recommend teaching children finances.
Yes.
Parents don't, schools don't.
Right.
My parents, I think they managed very well, but I didn't know what they were doing to do that.
Right.
I didn't even have money in my hands till I was 18.
Right.
And then they still didn't talk to me about it.
Exactly.
I was left on my own. And fortunately, I was a very conservative spender, because it took me 18 years to get money in my hands.
Right. So
I
when you
was not going to spend it all,
right.
no matter how big or how little it was. And that attitude was very successful.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm talking to a child, and I have a series of workshops that I'm doing, one called Pennies Matter.
Right.
You can't get to $1 without a penny.
I like
so
that.
if you're a child and you have extra money left over from your allowance,
right,
or extra money left over from lunch, and your parents don't require you to do anything specific with it, go put it in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
You've met your needs for the day, and your parents are taking care of everything else outside of what they gave you. Put it in a cookie jar. Let that cookie jar amount up to enough to open a savings account. Don't touch it unless you really need it. And then there's a chapter on what is a need.
Yeah.
Because you might say you need a new pair of shoes, but
right,
you got 20 pair in your closet. So do you really need?
I like
is that
that.
Really a need?
I like that.
That's a want. So we define what a need and a want is, because that's part of changing your attitude.
Yeah.
You don't need a new outfit to go on a date. You've never been out on this date before. Grab something out of your closet and go on a date. You might not like the date after the first date. So why are you spending money on an outfit?
You know what? I like this. And first of all, I want you to give the title of your book out, because I'll be honest with you. If I've got a teen, and if I have one in my house now, if I had any children, this would be in their room on their bookshelf, because I think that not only should adults grab this book and educate themselves, because a lot of us can still use some more knowledge, but this is absolutely essential in my child's reading library. It really is. I mean, they can have some of their comic books and that other stuff, but I want a book like yours in their room so they can kind of start to really progress into this. Because you know what I'm hearing is there also, as you were just describing those scenarios, is a basic conversation with young people about the real value of money. We live in a very entitled, instant society in which a lot of these young people, it's hard to imagine when you look at us and how we had to actually get up, get in a car, or get our parents to take us to a store. Now, with an Amazon and all these curbside deliveries, I mean, kids just simply, they get their hands on a little money, or they might have access to a credit card, and they just simply pick their phones up. They want something, to get it. And as you point out, it's a lot of times when you're getting in college, or when you get out of college and you get on your own, you realize it's, there's a tab to be paid for all this stuff now. You got to pay for it, and it's a very hard kick in the what when you go out here. And so I think that, as you were just kind of alluding to, it really starts with the value of money.
Yes, and your attitude towards money. But this book goes a little further than that.
Yeah.
It's called God's Bailout Plan. And the subtitle is Bible-Based Financial Principles.
Now explain that. I like that, because that's another take on it.
Every aspect of your finances, God tells you how to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about diversifying your income. He talks about saving. He talks about co-signing.
Yeah.
He talks about credit. So if you're reading your Bible...
Now, what he said, I got to know about this. I'm sorry. Don't give me the entire section in the book. But what did he say about co-signing? I want to know what God said about that.
You want to hear it in one word? You want to hear it in one word? He said, don't do it.
I knew he said don't do it. I knew he said don't do it.
But now someone else asked me, does that include your spouse? Now...
Well, you're one, aren't you, if you're with your spouse?
That was my response. Yeah. You're one.
Yeah.
Your debt should be together.
Right.
So that's
it's just that cousin or that distant family friend that you don't
cousin, your brother, your sister, your mother, your children, your grandmother. It's no. But there's a way to help them.
Right.
Like, if they need help, then you should do it out of your pocket.
Right.
If you can afford to. Now, I know a lot of kids in college, sometimes they want to move to an apartment.
Yeah.
And sometimes that calls for cosign.
Right.
So are you going to trust a college kid who's in school full time to be able to always pay that bill?
I'm so glad you can't talk to my parents, because that's exactly what happened to me, and they got a lot of calls from the rental office.
Yeah. They should have met me then. But really, I didn't know that then.
Yeah.
But yes, that's the word on co-signing. There's a chapter in the book on co-signing.
No, I like that. I like that you bring a spiritual component into it. And so as you talked about how long it kind of took you, it was unexpectedly, about a year, 2 and a half, 2 years?
Yes.
That took you to write the book. Did you find yourself kind of, I guess, being, obviously you're a very religious person, you're a pastor's wife, as you identified yourself. Did you find yourself kind of a little amazed about how much the Bible talked about finances as you were kind of going back and referencing different things? You said, hey, I want to make this spiritual base. Let me go check the source. And were you a little surprised about just how much it did talk about finances?
Well, like I said, I was doing workshops, and they were also financial Bible-based workshops.
Okay.
But like I tell everybody, you read the Bible and you could go back and read the same thing a year later and get something different.
Yeah.
So since the workshops, I have discovered things that I didn't know at first.
Right.
And and there's so many verses in the Bible that I'm positive that I haven't read every single one.
Yeah.
But I have read a lot of them. And each chapter is supported by stories
Mm-hmm.
to illustrate why you should or shouldn't do something.
Right.
So every chapter has scriptures to validate the position that's being taken.
Wow.
And then I give you practical solutions as to how to implement or not implement
Yeah.
what the Bible is encouraging you to do.
Amazing. We're talking with Miss Carolyn Keith. She is a licensed CPA, of course, longtime member of the Gary Community School District up until 2007, and then of course has gone on into other endeavors. Her latest being she's a author. She's out here promoting her second book. I keep forgetting the title. You have to excuse me. Here it is right here. It's called God's Bailout Plan, and I like this. Now,
Get it on Amazon.
I want to. It's on Amazon.
Right.
No, it's on Amazon. I was going to ask you where we can get this. What do you say to the people? We were talking about young people. What do you say to the people that are, right now around in their middle age? Right. We're hearing a lot of different sectors. I was just talking on this show a couple of weeks ago. About an event in Chicago I was watching in which they were talking about, you had public safety. It was a public safety meeting. And you had police on one side, which were making the argument about trying to retain some of their commanders. They wanted the retirement age going up because they got guys and gals that are kind of aging out, and they wanted to kind of keep them. They said, we need that wisdom and we need that knowledge. While conversely, on the other side, you had the fire department and the firemen who were like, look, we're not trying to raise the, people can get hurt. This is a physical job and things like that. But I'm just using those two sectors as an example because that's a question that we have in our country right now, is about what is the retirement age. Obviously, you can get into a political debate about the government and Social Security availability, and that's why they want to raise it, because they don't want people cashing out right now. But what do you say to that middle-aged person that's sitting around looking and saying, you know what, I don't know if I have enough to retire. I'm going to have to work into my late 60s. I'm around my, I'm about 50, I'm 48, I'm 45. What can I do to at least get myself straight or start the process? What would you say to them?
Well, they would need a complete review of their finances, because are they not ready because they're overspending?
Yeah.
Are they not ready because they co-signed and now they're responsible for a lot of other people's debt? What are they? Are they still supporting grown children?
Yeah.
You should be supporting themselves,
Right,
so that you can get yourself together to retire. Everybody has a different story.
right.
You need to know the story in order to be able to offer help.
Yeah.
But I always say God is a God of many chances.
Yeah.
So if you're not where you want to be when you're 50, get God's bailout plan.
Get God's bailout plan.
Go to the section that you're having problems with, and you start there.
Yeah.
Everything may not be a mess.
Yeah.
You may not have a problem with savings. It's just that you don't always have as much left over as you would like to save.
Right.
Maybe you don't have a lot of credit cards. Maybe that's not your problem, but you got 5 kids and they're all over 21,
Right.
and you're still paying their rent.
Yeah.
So you need to get them on track.
Yeah.
Because you're about to retire and they stay where they are. They're not going to be able to help you.
I feel like I'm getting scolded from my mom. You're channeling my mother as you speak to me. Yes, you are.
I'm trying to have a friendly, encouraging tone. That you can do it.
No, absolutely. No, this is great information. It really is. First of all, I want to ask you this because I just, obviously, as I said, your background, you're a CPA, licensed CPA. I got to ask you, during this time of the year, what is it like for you? Is it annoying for an accountant because you got friends, family, everybody knows you and they want you to do their taxes and give them some advice? I mean, just tell me, just like during the eclipse, we saw all the weathermen and all the nerds come out on Monday. This was their time. And I consider myself a geek. I'm not a nerd yet. But during this time, this just seems like it's like either you love being a CPA or you absolutely hate it and you hide your profession from your family and friends because everybody wants you to look at this receipt. Can I claim this? How do I do this?
I don't have that problem because I know a lot of people associate CPAs with
The taxes. Yeah.
But we're also specialized.
Right.
Just like a doctor.
Yeah.
You wouldn't ask a foot doctor to do brain surgery.
Well, most of us don't even know the specialties of a CPA.
That's why I say they normally associate CPA with taxes. Now, I do my own and my family's, but everybody knows that.
Don't come to you with theirs.
I don't know. So the only taxes I'm struggling with right now are mine.
Yeah.
I've done all the families already.
Right. Do you do the churches?
No.
Oh, really?
Our church don't pay. It doesn't pay.
Oh, that's right. It's non-profit.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So I want to ask you before we get into how to find the book and things like that. Tell me about the first book. I mean, you said this was your second. So what was the first one about?
The first one came about from being a Sunday school teacher.
Oh.
I've been working with kids for a long time. And when you're sitting there and you're trying to teach whatever the pre-planned lesson was, it's like, gosh, how am I going to talk to them about this? This is not, very interesting.
Right.
And so I used to make up games, crossword puzzles, word finds.
You were that fun Sunday school teacher.
Took them out of church and sat on the bus or whatever. This was before the church I'm at now.
Right.
And I just did different things and made it competitive. Tried to make it interesting. So after doing that a few years, I looked up and said, I have a lot of activities. I can make a Christian activity book.
Oh.
So I started shopping it around to publishers.
Yeah.
And I kept going until I got a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the publisher I got to wasn't interested in an activity book with lots of activities. They were only interested in my crossword puzzle.
Right.
So I said, I'll take that.
Yeah.
So the publishing company was in Ohio, and they published a book, and that is 20 Christian crossword puzzles.
Yeah, I like that. Is it still available?
In print.
It's not in print anymore?
But I did go into, because since they took over the book, the rights, they own the puzzles.
Yeah.
I did. Do you remember the Gary Bible Bookstore?
Yes.
That was on Broadway?
Yeah.
It was sold there.
Oh, wow. That's pretty interesting. So, as you look at your writing career going forward, are you going to stay with faith-based books, or have you even flirted with the idea of kind of going out and doing something mainstream? Now, as I say that, I was talking to some people about this a while ago, and maybe it's a pushback from the current culture and things like that. But one of the things that is going on kind of culturally is there is this new awakening of like streaming Christian media. I mean, I think the phenomenon really was this television show called The Chosen. Mm-hmm. I know you're familiar with, but we're starting to see people like go to that. I was looking, we were looking on our menu on one of our TVs, and I'm seeing a lot more kind of faith-based type of programming and services coming out. So there is absolutely a need and a market for your writing and things like that. But I was just asking you, as an artist, have you thought about just kind of broadening it, or is this the lane that you want to stay in?
Well, I think it's the lane I must stay in because I have outlines for 70 books.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you're going to be in this.
35 children and 35 adults.
Yeah.
Because I've done retreats.
Oh.
I've done 36 so far, and every time I have a theme, I can't find exactly what I want to for the materials to teach. We're not the type of retreat that get these speakers to come in. Mm-hmm. I'm in an urban area where cost is very sensitive.
Yeah.
And you're trying to attract as many people to go on the retreat as possible.
Right.
So I create the workshop material in the forms of books, but it's a family retreat, so we have anybody 8 years old and up to go. So each retreat,
there's a broadness to that. Yeah.
So each retreat, I have to develop a children's book based on the theme, and then an adult book. So each year I do 2. They're not in shape to be published, because you know how sometimes you grab something from the internet. It's like, oh, this ties into that. Well, I need to take these books and clean them up. Work with an illustrator to make
a lot of work
pages for children. But the book is 80% complete. The 70 books.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that sounds like a lot because
complete. So I want to put those on the market so people can use it for retreats.
Right.
VBS, because it'll be set up where it's in modules. So if you just want it for a Sunday school lesson, you can pick out something in the book that maybe only takes 35 minutes with an activity attached.
Now, how do you do it as for children? Because as I said, as you talked about, I didn't even really think about this, but you were saying, okay, as young as 8 years old at some of these retreats. So now you're going from 8 to possibly 18, 16. How do you?
I'm going from 8 to 90.
8 to 90. I'm just thinking about the children and the fact that you, in fact, are creating these modules. You're writing this material. And so you also, as you were bringing up when you were the fun Bible teacher, that you wanted to do something that captured their attention and inspired them. So you got to be age appropriate even within that group. And so that just seems like it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yes, because I use children's Bibles.
Yeah, because the 8th grade, the 8-year-old is going, 13-year-old doesn't want to read what the 8-year-old's reading.
So I use a children's Bible to get scripture for them.
Right.
For those 12 and up, they get the same thing as adults.
Okay, that makes sense. We're talking with Miss Carolyn Keefe. She is an author. She's got a wonderful book entitled God's Bailout. You got a book signing coming up. I don't want you to leave without talking about that. So tell us some details about that. Where can we meet you and get you to sign a copy of your book?
The book signing is this Saturday, actually, on the 13th from 11 to 2.
Yeah.
It's at the church where my husband is pastor. It's Mount Hebron Baptist Church, 3445 West Douglas Boulevard in Chicago.
Right. I'm trying to picture where that is.
It's on the west side.
West side. I thought so. And so, as you said, it's from 11 to 2.
Right.
Copies of the book will be available for purchase.
Right.
Yeah. And for those people that might not be able to make it, but still are interested, how do they go about acquiring the book?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
You can find it by the name God's Bailout Plan. There's another book that has that title, but the subtitle is different. So you just need to make sure you get the one that says Carolyn Keefe. Carolyn Keefe.
Carolyn Keefe, God's Bailout Plan. Once again, young lady, this was an absolute pleasure. I told you I want to come pick your brain about your other job one day, but I definitely appreciated meeting you, talking about this, because I think that, as I said before, I think this should be, we have libraries. I'm in the libraries, my wife and I, and so we have in our house. And my parents used to have one in my room and then one downstairs. So I just believe your book should be in a family's library, not just sitting there for decorations, reading it, of course, but I do think it's a great book to have as part of your library. And so I definitely wish you all the success. And before you go, once again, give us some logistics. You got a website? You got anything? Give me a website to the church. Look out for your husband.
It's mymounthebron.org.
Yeah.
That's the church's website.
Yeah. And then do you have a personal website?
Yes, I do. Everything is new.
Okay, I got you.
Instagram.
There you go.
It's vineyardministry.org.
Vineyardministry.org.
That's the website.
Okay,
yes.
Absolutely.
And if I can, there are 2 unique things in the book.
Okay, go ahead.
In the front is a self-assessment tool.
Yeah.
Where you get to rate where you are on your Christian journey and finances.
Oh.
The books, after the introduction, the book starts off with that. Then at the end, right before the conclusion, there is what I think is a fun poem. It makes you do introspect on yourself.
Right.
And then, hopefully in a fun way, it encourages you to go back and pick up the areas that you might need improvement in.
I like that. It sounds like a very helpful book. I'm genuine when I say that. It really does. So as I said, it's been a pleasure meeting you. I'm definitely looking forward. Book signing tomorrow at the church, Mount Hebron.
Saturday.
On Saturday. I'm sorry. I'm thinking today's Friday. You see, I've already checked out.
No.
The eclipse threw me off. But anyway, so it's this Saturday.
From 11 to 2.
Yeah.
At 3445 West Douglas Boulevard.
It's been a pleasure, ma'am, and I really enjoyed this. And as I said, this book should be in every family's home right now. And in particular, you should be using it as a tool to help your children with their financial literacy and really financial literacy for the house. So this was a welcome visit. I appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to get